The snow began to fall sometime around 4 in the afternoon, drifting down through the slate-gray sky in soft, unhurried spirals that seemed to carry with them all the quietude of the winter season. The flakes landed gently on the rooftops of Maple Grove, a small town nestled in the rolling hills of the countryside, where the houses sat close together like old friends, keeping each other warm. Smoke rose from chimneys in lazy ribbons, curling upward into the cold air before dissolving into the clouds above, and the street lamps had already begun to flicker on, casting pools of amber light across the sidewalks dusted with fresh powder. In a small apartment above the old bakery on Chestnut Street, a woman named Clara stood by the window, watching the snow accumulate on the windowsill. She held a cup of tea between her hands, the warmth seeping through the ceramic and into her palms, and she breathed in the faint scent of chamomile mingled with the distant sweetness of bread that seemed to linger in the walls themselves, a ghost of the bakery's former life. The apartment was modest, just 3 rooms with walls painted a soft cream color that had faded over the years into something warmer, something that held memories in its very texture. A small Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with ornaments her daughter Lily had made over the years. Paper stars and painted pine cones and strings of popcorn that had begun to droop with age but still sparkled when the light caught them just right. Clara was tired in the way that single mothers often are, a weariness that lived in her bones rather than just her eyes, though she carried it with a kind of grace that made others want to help her without quite knowing why. She had moved to Maple Grove 5 years ago, after the divorce, seeking a fresh start in a town small enough to feel safe but large enough to offer possibility. She had found work at the local library, shelving books and helping patrons find what they were looking for, and she had made a quiet life for herself and Lily in this apartment above the bakery where the rent was reasonable, and the landlady, Mrs. Patterson, had been kind enough to let them stay even during the months when money was tight. But Mrs. Patterson had passed away in the autumn, peacefully in her sleep at the age of 87, and the building had passed to someone new, someone Clara had never met. The letters had begun arriving in November, formal correspondence on thick cream-colored paper that spoke of new ownership and changing circumstances and the need to reassess the terms of occupancy. Clara had read each one carefully, her heart growing heavier with every paragraph, until the final letter arrived just 3 days before Christmas, informing her that she had until the end of the month to vacate the premises. She did not feel anger, exactly. The emotion was softer than that, more like the ache of watching something beautiful slip through your fingers. The way sand falls through the gaps no matter how tightly you try to hold on. She had worked so hard to build this life, to create a home for Lily filled with warmth and stability and love, and now it seemed that all of it might dissolve like the snow on the warm glass of the window. Lily was 7 years old, with her mother's dark hair and her father's green eyes, and she possessed a kind of innocent wisdom that sometimes startled Clara with its depth. She was upstairs now, in the small bedroom they shared, working on a Christmas card for her teacher, her tongue poking out in concentration as she carefully glued glitter to construction paper. She did not know about the eviction notice. Clara had decided to wait until after Christmas to tell her, wanting to preserve the magic of the holiday for as long as possible, wanting to give her daughter this one last perfect Christmas in the home they loved. The bakery below was closed now, had been closed since Mrs. Patterson's passing, and the silence that rose up through the floorboards felt like an absence, a missing heartbeat in the building that had once thrummed with life. Clara missed the smell of fresh bread in the mornings, the way the warmth from the ovens would seep up through the floor and make their apartment feel like it was wrapped in a gentle embrace. She missed the sound of Mrs. Patterson humming hymns as she worked, her thin voice carrying up through the vents like a lullaby meant just for them. The new owner had not visited, had not called, had communicated only through those formal letters that felt as cold as the December wind. Clara did not know who they were or why they wanted her gone, only that they did, and that she had neither the money nor the means to fight them. She had spent the past 3 weeks searching for a new place to live, but affordable apartments in Maple Grove were scarce, especially ones that would accept a single mother with a modest income and no security deposit saved up. She had put in applications at 6 different places and received rejection letters from 4 of them, and the remaining 2 had simply gone silent, which felt somehow worse. But tonight, on this quiet evening 3 days before Christmas, Clara did not want to think about any of that. She wanted to watch the snow fall and drink her tea and listen to the soft sounds of her daughter creating something beautiful upstairs. She wanted to hold on to this moment, this gentle pause in the midst of difficulty, and trust that somehow, in some way she could not yet see, things would work out. She had learned, over the years, that worry did not add a single hour to one's life, and that sometimes the best thing you could do in the face of uncertainty was simply breathe and wait, and keep your heart open to possibility. The snow continued to fall, softening the edges of the world outside the window, transforming the familiar streets of Maple Grove into something that looked like a scene from a storybook. Clara finished her tea and set the cup down on the windowsill, then turned and walked toward the stairs, her footsteps quiet on the worn wooden floors. She wanted to see what Lily was making, wanted to sit beside her daughter and watch her small hands work their magic with paper and glue and glitter. She wanted to be present, fully present, in this moment that would never come again. Upstairs, the bedroom was warm and softly lit, a single lamp casting a golden glow across the space. Lily sat at a small desk by the window, her head bent over her work, her dark hair falling in waves around her face. She looked up when Clara entered, her green eyes bright with excitement. "I'm almost done, Mama," she said, holding up the card for Clara to see. It was a Christmas tree made of green construction paper, covered in so much glitter that it seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. The words Merry Christmas were written across the top in careful, slightly crooked letters, and at the bottom, Lily had drawn a small figure with dark hair and a red dress, standing beside a taller figure with the same dark hair. "That's us," Lily explained, pointing at the two figures. "See? That's you and that's me, and we're standing by our Christmas tree." Clara felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away and smiled, crossing the room to kneel beside her daughter. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," she said softly. "Mrs. Martinez is going to love it." Lily beamed, her whole face lighting up with joy in the way that only children's faces can, uncomplicated and pure and radiant. "Do you think it will snow all night?" she asked, turning to look out the window at the white flakes drifting past. "I think it might," Clara said, reaching out to smooth a strand of hair away from Lily's face. "The weatherman said we might get 6 inches by morning." Lily's eyes widened. 6 inches? That's enough for a snowman. "Can we build a snowman tomorrow, Mama? Please?" Clara hesitated, thinking of all the things she needed to do tomorrow, all the phone calls she needed to make, all the worrying she would inevitably do despite her best intentions not to. But then she looked at her daughter's hopeful face, at the trust and love shining in those green eyes, and she nodded. "We can build a snowman," she said, "first thing in the morning, before breakfast." Lily threw her arms around Clara's neck, hugging her tightly, and Clara held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, that sweet, familiar smell of childhood and innocence that she knew would not last forever. She wanted to freeze this moment, to capture it like a photograph and keep it safe forever, this feeling of being needed and loved and whole despite everything that was falling apart around her. They stayed like that for a long moment, mother and daughter wrapped in each other's arms, while the snow continued to fall outside the window and the lamp cast its warm light across the room. Finally, Lily pulled back, yawning, her eyes growing heavy with sleep. "I'm tired, Mama," she said, rubbing her eyes with the backs of her hands. Clara smiled and stood up, helping Lily climb into bed and tucking the covers around her. She smoothed the blankets down, feeling the softness of the worn cotton beneath her fingers, and bent to kiss her daughter's forehead. "Sleep well, sweetheart," she whispered. "Sweet dreams." Lily's eyes were already closing, her breathing slowing into the gentle rhythm of sleep. "Good night, Mama," she murmured. "I love you. I love you too," Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper, "more than all the stars in the sky." She turned off the lamp and stood for a moment in the darkness, watching the snow drift past the window, white against the black of the night sky. Then she quietly left the room, pulling the door most of the way closed behind her, leaving just a crack so the light from the hallway could spill through and keep the darkness at bay. Downstairs, Clara sat in the old armchair by the window, the one that had come with the apartment and had molded itself over the years to fit her body perfectly. She did not turn on the television or pick up a book. She simply sat, watching the snow fall, letting her thoughts drift like the white flakes outside, settling where they would. She thought about the letter from the new owner, about the cold formality of the words, and she wondered what kind of person would evict a single mother and her child 3 days before Christmas. She thought about Mrs. Patterson, about her kindness and her hymns and the way she had always left fresh bread outside their door on Sunday mornings. She thought about the years she had spent building this life, the careful, patient work of creating a home, and she felt a wave of grief wash over her, not violent or overwhelming, but soft and steady, like the tide coming in. But beneath the grief, there was something else, something that felt like hope despite everything. Clara had learned over the years that life had a way of surprising you when you least expected it, that doors closed and windows opened, that sometimes the worst things that happened to you became the best things in hindsight. She did not know what would happen in the days and weeks ahead, but she knew that she would face it with grace and courage, for Lily's sake, if not for her own. The snow fell and fell, covering the world in a blanket of white, and Clara sat in her chair and watched it, feeling something like peace settle over her, gentle and unexpected. Whatever came next, she and Lily would face it together. That was all that mattered. That was enough. The next morning dawned bright and cold, the sky a pale winter blue that seemed to stretch on forever, and the snow lay thick and pristine across the streets of Maple Grove, untouched as yet by footprints or tire tracks. Clara woke to the sound of Lily bouncing on the bed beside her, her small body vibrating with excitement. "Mama! Mama, wake up! It's snowing. Can we build the snowman now? Can we?" Clara opened her eyes and smiled, reaching out to catch her daughter in a hug. "Let me make some coffee first," she said, her voice rough with sleep, "and then we'll bundle up and go outside." Lily cheered and jumped off the bed, racing to the window to look out at the snow-covered world. "It's so beautiful, Mama," she breathed, her voice filled with wonder. "It looks like a fairy tale." Clara joined her at the window, wrapping an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "It does," she agreed, "like something out of a storybook." They ate a simple breakfast of oatmeal and toast, the radiator clanking softly in the corner as it pumped heat into the small apartment. Then they bundled up in layers of sweaters and coats and scarves, and Clara helped Lily pull on her boots and mittens before they made their way downstairs and out the back door into the small courtyard behind the building. The snow was deep and soft, coming up past Lily's ankles, and she laughed with delight as she plunged into it, scooping up handfuls and tossing them into the air. Clara watched her play, her heart full of a love so fierce it almost hurt, and she allowed herself to forget, just for this moment, about the eviction notice and the uncertain future. She allowed herself to simply be here, in this beautiful winter morning, with her daughter. They built a snowman together, rolling the snow into 3 balls of decreasing size and stacking them carefully on top of each other. Clara found some stones for the eyes and mouth, and Lily contributed a carrot from the kitchen for the nose and an old scarf that had belonged to Clara's mother for warmth. When they were done, they stood back and admired their creation, a lumpy but lovable figure that stood guard in the courtyard like a friendly sentinel. "He needs a name," Lily declared, studying the snowman with a critical eye. "What do you think we should call him?" Clara asked. Lily thought for a moment, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Bartholomew," she said finally. "He looks like a Bartholomew." Clara laughed, the sound bright and unexpected in the cold air. "Bartholomew it is," she agreed. "Welcome to the family, Bartholomew." They played in the snow for another hour, making snow angels and catching snowflakes on their tongues and throwing snowballs that exploded into soft powder on impact. By the time they went back inside, their cheeks were red and their fingers were numb, despite their mittens, but they were both laughing and happy, the simple joy of the morning washing away everything else. Clara made hot chocolate, the real kind with milk and cocoa powder and a touch of vanilla, and they sat together on the couch, wrapped in blankets, sipping their drinks and watching the steam rise in lazy spirals. The apartment felt warm and safe, a cocoon against the cold world outside, and Clara let herself relax into the moment, let herself believe that everything would be okay. "Mama?" Lily said, her voice soft and thoughtful. "Yes, sweetheart. Why did Mrs. Patterson have to go away?" Clara set down her mug and pulled Lily closer, choosing her words carefully. "Mrs. Patterson was very old," she said gently, "and sometimes, when people get very old, their bodies get tired and they need to rest. So she went somewhere peaceful where she doesn't have to be tired anymore. Is she in heaven?" "I think so," Clara said. I think she's somewhere beautiful, where the bread is always fresh and warm and the hymns never stop." Lily nodded, seeming satisfied with this answer. "I miss her," she said simply. "I miss her too," Clara agreed. "But we can remember her, can't we? We can remember how kind she was, and how her bread tasted, and how she used to hum those songs. And as long as we remember her, she's never really gone." Lily smiled, a small, peaceful smile, and snuggled closer to her mother. "I like that," she said. "I'll remember her forever." They sat together in comfortable silence, finishing their hot chocolate while the winter sun climbed higher in the sky, and the snow outside began to sparkle like diamonds scattered across white velvet. It was the kind of morning that Clara knew she would remember for the rest of her life, one of those perfect moments that stand out in the memory like beacons of light in the darkness. Later that afternoon, while Lily napped on the couch, tired out from the morning's adventures, Clara sat at the small kitchen table and looked through the newspaper, searching the classified ads for apartments. There were only 3 listings in her price range, and 2 of them she had already applied to without success. The third was in a part of town she didn't know well, a few streets over from the old mill that had closed down years ago, but she circled it anyway, determined to at least go and look. She was just reaching for the phone to call when there was a knock at the door, soft but insistent. Clara froze, her heart suddenly beating faster. No one ever knocked on her door. Her friends, what few she had in Maple Grove, always called first, and anyone else would have used the bell downstairs. She crossed to the door and opened it a crack, peering out into the dim hallway. A man stood there, tall and thin, wearing a dark overcoat dusted with snow. He had gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and he held a folder of papers in one hand. "Oh, Mrs. Clara Reynolds?" he asked, his voice gentle and unhurried. "Yes," Clara said cautiously. "My name is Henry Whitmore," the man said. "I'm an attorney. I was hoping I might have a moment of your time." Clara hesitated, uncertainty swirling in her chest. An attorney. That couldn't be good news. But there was something about the man's face, something warm and trustworthy, that made her step back and open the door wider. "Please come in," she said. "Can I offer you some tea?" "That would be lovely," Henry Whitmore said, stepping inside and brushing the snow from his coat. "Cold out there today." Clara led him to the small living room and gestured for him to sit in the armchair while she went to the kitchen to put the kettle on. When she returned, he was looking around the room with an expression of quiet appreciation, taking in the Christmas tree and the photographs on the walls and the general sense of warmth that permeated the space. "You've made a lovely home here," he said as she handed him a cup of tea. "Thank you," Clara said, settling onto the couch across from him. She glanced at Lily, still asleep, and lowered her voice. "Mr. Whitmore, I don't mean to be rude, but I'm not sure why you're here. Is this about the eviction?" Henry Whitmore took a sip of his tea, then set the cup down and opened the folder on his lap. In a manner of speaking, he said, "I represent the estate of Margaret Patterson." Clara blinked. "Mrs. Patterson?" "Yes. I was her attorney for many years." He paused, shuffling through the papers. "Mrs. Reynolds, I'm not sure how much you knew about Margaret's circumstances, but she was quite fond of you and your daughter. Very fond, in fact. She was wonderful to us," Clara said softly. "I still can't believe she's gone." Henry nodded sympathetically. "Margaret left a will," he said, his voice taking on a slightly more formal tone. "It was her wish that certain provisions be made for people she cared about." He pulled out a document and handed it to Clara. "I think you should read this." Clara took the paper with trembling hands, her eyes scanning the legal language, trying to make sense of the formal phrases and numbered clauses. And then she saw her name, and Lily's name, and her heart seemed to stop. "I don't understand," she whispered. Henry Whitmore smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. "Margaret left you this building, Mrs. Reynolds. The bakery, the apartments, all of it. She wanted you and Lily to have a home, a permanent one, that no one could ever take from you." Clara stared at him, unable to speak. Tears were streaming down her face now, silent and unstoppable, falling onto the paper in her hands. But the eviction notice she finally managed. The new owner... "Ah," Henry said, his expression becoming somewhat rueful. "That was a mistake, I'm afraid. A rather unfortunate one. You see, Margaret's nephew, a man named Douglas Fletcher attempted to contest the will. He hired his own attorney and began sending those letters, claiming ownership of the building and demanding that tenants vacate. But his claim has no legal standing. Margaret was very clear in her wishes, and the will is ironclad. "So I don't have to leave?" Clara whispered. "No," Henry said firmly. "You don't have to leave. In fact, if you want to, you never have to leave. This is your home now, Mrs. Reynolds, yours and Lily's. Margaret wanted you to have it, and it's yours." Clara sat in stunned silence, trying to process what she was hearing. The building was hers. The apartment was hers. She didn't have to find a new place, didn't have to uproot Lily, didn't have to start over again. Mrs. Patterson had given them a gift beyond anything Clara could have imagined, a gift of security and stability and home. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why would she do this for us?" Henry smiled again, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Because she loved you," he said simply. "Because you and Lily were like family to her, and she wanted to take care of you even after she was gone. That was the kind of woman Margaret was. She believed in taking care of people." Clara looked down at Lily, still sleeping peacefully on the couch, her small chest rising and falling with each breath. She thought about all the mornings Mrs. Patterson had left bread outside their door, all the times she had invited them down for tea, all the quiet kindnesses that had accumulated over the years like snowflakes, small individually but transformative in the aggregate. "Thank you," Clara said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for telling me." Henry gathered up his papers and stood to leave. "There will be some paperwork to sign," he said, "but nothing that can't wait until after the holidays. For now, I wanted you to know that you're safe, that you and Lily have a home." Clara walked him to the door, still feeling like she was moving through a dream. At the threshold, Henry paused and turned back to her. "Merry Christmas, Mrs. Reynolds," he said. "Margaret would have wanted me to tell you that." "Merry Christmas," Clara replied, and then he was gone, disappearing down the stairs and out into the snowy afternoon. Clara closed the door and leaned against it, her heart so full she thought it might burst. She looked around the apartment, at the cream-colored walls and the Christmas tree and the photographs and all the small details that made this place home, and she felt a wave of gratitude so profound it brought her to her knees. She stayed there for a long moment, kneeling on the floor of her apartment letting the tears fall freely. Tears of relief, tears of joy, tears of thanksgiving for the kindness of a woman who had seen her, had valued her, had loved her enough to ensure that she and Lily would always have a place to call home. When she finally stood up, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, Lily was stirring on the couch, her green eyes fluttering open. "Mama," she said sleepily, "why are you crying?" Clara crossed to the couch and gathered her daughter in her arms, holding her tight. "Happy tears, sweetheart," she said. "I'm crying happy tears. Why are you happy?" Clara pulled back and looked into her daughter's face at the trust and love shining in those green eyes. "Because we're going to be okay," she said. "Because this is our home, Lily. Forever and ever. And no one can ever take it away from us." Lily's face broke into a smile. "Really?" "Really." Lily threw her arms around Clara's neck, hugging her fiercely. "That's the best Christmas present ever, Mama," she said. Clara laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep inside her, from a place she had forgotten existed. "It is," she agreed. "It really, really is." The rest of the day passed in a warm haze of joy and relief. Clara called her sister in Portland and told her the news, laughing and crying in equal measure. She made dinner, a simple meal of pasta and vegetables, but it tasted like the most delicious thing she had ever eaten. She and Lily decorated gingerbread cookies, covering them in so much frosting and sprinkles that the actual cookie was barely visible, and they sang Christmas carols at the top of their lungs, filling the apartment with music and laughter. That night, after Lily was asleep, Clara sat by the window again, watching the snow that had begun to fall once more. But this time, instead of anxiety, she felt only peace. The future, which had seemed so uncertain just that morning, now stretched before her like a path through a beautiful garden, full of possibility and promise. She thought about Mrs. Patterson, about her kindness and her generosity, and she made a silent vow to honor her memory. She would take care of this building, would make it a place where people felt safe and welcome and loved. She would carry forward the spirit of compassion that Mrs. Patterson had embodied, passing it on to Lily and to anyone else who crossed her path. The snow fell softly, silently, covering the world in white, and Clara sat and watched it, feeling something settle into place inside her, something that had been broken for a long time finally beginning to heal. She was home. She was safe. She was loved. And that was all she had ever really wanted. The days between Christmas Eve and Christmas morning seemed to stretch and compress in the way that time does during significant moments, elastic and strange. Clara woke on Christmas Eve to find Lily already awake, sitting by the window and watching the snow-covered street below with an expression of pure contentment on her small face. "Mama," she said without turning around, "do you think Santa knows we live here now? For real?" Clara smiled and crossed to the window, wrapping her arms around her daughter from behind. "I think Santa knows everything, sweetheart," she said. "That's kind of his specialty." They spent the morning baking, filling the apartment with the warm scents of cinnamon and sugar and butter. Clara taught Lily how to roll out pie crust, guiding her small hands as they pressed the rolling pin across the dough, and together they made an apple pie that was perhaps a little lumpy and uneven, but was filled with love in every bite. In the afternoon, there was a knock at the door, and when Clara opened it, she found her neighbor from across the hall, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, standing there with a plate of cookies. "I heard the news," Mrs. Chen said, her weathered face breaking into a smile. "About the building, about what Margaret did." She thrust the plate toward Clara. "These are for you and the little one." Clara took the plate, touched by the gesture. "Thank you," she said. "Would you like to come in for some tea?" Mrs. Chen hesitated, then nodded. "I would like that," she said. "It has been lonely since Margaret passed. The building feels empty without her." They sat in the small living room, Mrs. Chen and Clara and Lily, drinking tea and eating cookies and talking about Mrs. Patterson. Mrs. Chen shared stories Clara had never heard, stories about Margaret's youth, about the husband she had lost 40 years ago, about the dream she had once had of traveling the world but had given up to take care of the bakery and the building. "She talked about you all the time," Mrs. Chen said, looking at Clara with soft eyes. "About how hard-working you were, how devoted to your daughter. She said you reminded her of herself when she was young." Clara felt tears prick at her eyes again. "I wish I could have told her how much she meant to us," she said, "how much her kindness helped us." Mrs. Chen reached out and patted Clara's hand. "She knew," she said simply. "Trust me, she knew." When Mrs. Chen left, promising to come back for Christmas dinner, Clara stood at the door and watched her make her way slowly down the hall. She thought about community, about the web of connections that held people together, and she felt a surge of gratitude for this place, for these people, for the life she had built here. Christmas Eve dinner was simple, but perfect. Clara made soup and fresh bread, the bread not nearly as good as Mrs. Patterson's had been, but warm and nourishing nonetheless. She and Lily ate by candlelight, the soft glow casting dancing shadows on the walls, and afterward they sat on the couch together and watched the snow fall outside the window. "Mama?" Lily said, her voice drowsy with approaching sleep. "Yes, sweetheart." "This is the best Christmas ever." Clara smiled and kissed the top of her daughter's head. "It is," she agreed. "It really is." She carried Lily to bed and tucked her in, smoothing the blankets around her small body and kissing her forehead. "Sleep well," she whispered. "Santa will be here soon." "Will he bring presents?" Lily murmured, her eyes already closing. "He will," Clara said. "But you know what? I think we already got the best present of all." "What's that?" "Each other," Clara said, "and our home, and all the love that surrounds us." Lily smiled in her sleep, a small peaceful curve of her lips, and Clara stood there for a long moment, watching her daughter dream. Then she quietly left the room and went to the closet where she had hidden the presents she had managed to scrape together over the past few months. A few small things, nothing extravagant, but chosen with love and care. She arranged them under the Christmas tree, the colored lights reflecting off the paper, and she felt a sense of completeness settle over her. This was what Christmas was about. Not the presents or the decorations or the elaborate celebrations, but this quiet moment of love and gratitude, of being present with the people who mattered most. Clara sat down in the armchair by the window and looked out at the night sky, at the stars that were just beginning to appear through breaks in the clouds. She thought about the year that was ending, about all its challenges and disappointments, but also about its unexpected gifts. She thought about the year ahead, about the possibilities that lay before her, and she felt something that she realized was hope, real hope, the kind that comes not from certainty about the future, but from trust in oneself and in the goodness of the universe. The clock on the wall ticked softly, marking the passage of time, and Clara let her eyes drift closed. She was tired, a good kind of tired, the kind that comes from a day well lived. She thought she would just rest here for a moment, just close her eyes and listen to the silence of the night and the soft sounds of the old building settling around her. She dreamed of Mrs. Patterson, a gentle dream in which they sat together in the bakery kitchen, the ovens warm and the smell of bread filling the air. Margaret was younger in the dream, her hair dark instead of gray, but her eyes were the same, full of warmth and wisdom. "You'll take care of them," Margaret said. "The building, the people, I know you will. I will," Clara promised. "I promise." Margaret smiled and reached out to pat Clara's hand. "That's all I needed to hear," she said. "Now wake up, dear. It's Christmas morning." Clara woke to the sound of Lily's voice, high and excited, calling from the other room. "Mama! Mama, wake up!" Santa came. She opened her eyes to find the room flooded with morning light, the snow outside glittering like a field of diamonds. She had slept in the chair all night, and her neck was stiff, but she didn't mind. She stretched and smiled and rose to her feet, ready to greet the day. Lily met her at the door, bouncing with excitement, her green eyes wide and sparkling. "Come see, come see." They went to the Christmas tree together, and Clara watched as Lily discovered her presents one by one. A new set of colored pencils, a book of fairy tales with beautiful illustrations, a soft knitted hat in her favorite shade of purple. Each gift was greeted with equal enthusiasm, equal joy, and Clara felt her heart overflow with love for this small person who found wonder in everything. After the presents, they made breakfast together, pancakes shaped like stars and moons, and they ate them at the kitchen table, the winter sun streaming through the window and warming their faces. Then they bundled up and went outside to visit Bartholomew the snowman, who had survived the night and stood proudly in the courtyard, his carrot nose slightly askew. "Merry Christmas, Bartholomew," Lily said solemnly, patting his round belly. "Merry Christmas," Clara echoed, and she meant it, every syllable. The rest of the day unfolded like a gift being unwrapped, slowly and sweetly. Mrs. Chen came for dinner, bringing a dish of noodles that she said was good luck for the new year. Other neighbors stopped by throughout the afternoon, drawn by some unspoken understanding that this was a day for community, for coming together. Clara's apartment, once so quiet, was filled with voices and laughter and the clinking of glasses raised in toast after toast. "To Mrs. Patterson," someone said. "May she rest in peace." "To new beginnings," someone else added. "To home," Clara said, raising her own glass. "And to the people who make it home." They ate and talked and laughed until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold and purple. One by one, the neighbors drifted away, full and happy, until only Clara and Lily remained, surrounded by the warm chaos of a day well spent. Clara sat on the couch and pulled Lily onto her lap, holding her close. "What was your favorite part of Christmas?" she asked. Lily thought for a moment. "All of it," she said finally, "but especially the part where we're together." Clara smiled and kissed her daughter's hair. "Mine too," she said. "That's my favorite part too." Outside, the snow began to fall again, soft and silent, covering the world in a fresh blanket of white. The Christmas lights twinkled on the tree, reflecting off the windows, and the apartment felt warm and safe and full of love. This was home, Clara thought. This was where they belonged. And no matter what challenges the future might bring, she knew they would face them together, she and Lily, surrounded by the kindness and generosity that had carried them through. The days that followed Christmas, the rhythm of life in the small apartment above the old bakery settled into something new and gentle. Clara found herself waking each morning with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. The knowledge that this building, this community, was now her responsibility, filling her with quiet determination rather than anxiety. She met with Henry Whitmore again, this time at his office downtown, to sign the paperwork that would officially transfer ownership of the building to her name. The office was warm and comfortable, lined with bookshelves full of leather-bound volumes, and Henry sat behind a large wooden desk that looked like it had stories of its own to tell. "There are a few things you should know," Henry said as Clara signed the documents. "Margaret left some funds as well, enough to cover the building's maintenance for the next few years. And she left instructions, if you'd like to read them." He handed her a sealed envelope, her name written across the front in Mrs. Patterson's careful, old-fashioned script. Clara took it with trembling hands, holding it like something precious. She didn't open it until she was home, sitting alone at the kitchen table while Lily played in the next room. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in the same careful handwriting. "My dear Clara," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then I have gone on to whatever comes next, and you have become the keeper of this old building. I hope you will forgive me for not telling you my plans while I was still alive. I worried it might change things between us, and I valued our friendship too much to risk that. I want you to know why I chose you. When you moved into this building 5 years ago, I saw in you something I recognized, a strength and a determination that reminded me of myself when I was young. You were starting over, building a new life for yourself and your daughter, and you did it with such grace and courage that I couldn't help but admire you. Over the years, as I watched you navigate the challenges of single motherhood, as I saw the love you poured into every moment with Lily, I came to care for you both deeply. You became the family I never had, the daughter I always wished for, and Lily became the grandchild I never expected to have. This building has been my life's work, my joy, and my burden in equal measure. I've loved every creaky floorboard, every drafty window, every temperamental radiator. And now I'm passing it on to you, not as a burden, but as a gift. A home for you and Lily, yes, but also an opportunity. An opportunity to create something beautiful, to build a community, to carry forward the legacy of kindness that I've tried to cultivate here. I have a few requests, if you'll indulge an old woman's wishes. First, be kind to the tenants. They're good people, most of them, just trying to get by like everyone else. Second, don't be afraid to ask for help. Running a building is harder than it looks, and there's no shame in admitting when you're in over your head. Third, and most importantly, take care of yourself. You spend so much time caring for others that you sometimes forget to care for yourself. You deserve rest and joy and peace. I believe in you, Clara. I believe in your strength and your goodness and your capacity for love. I know you'll do wonderful things with this building, and I know you'll raise Lily to be the kind of person who makes the world a little bit better just by being in it. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for all the cups of tea, all the conversations, all the moments of connection that made my last years so full of warmth. I will carry those memories with me wherever I go. With all my love, Margaret Clara read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face with each reading. She felt Mrs. Patterson's presence so strongly in those words, her warmth and her wisdom and her gentle humor. She felt seen and valued and loved in a way she hadn't felt in a very long time. She folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her pocket, close to her heart. Then she wiped her eyes and went to find Lily, who was building a tower of blocks in the corner of the living room. "Mama, look," Lily said, her eyes bright with pride. "I built a castle." Clara knelt down beside her, admiring the structure. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. The most beautiful castle I've ever seen. Can we build one together? A really big one?" Clara smiled and picked up a block. "We can build anything you want," she said. "Anything at all." They spent the rest of the afternoon on the floor together, building castles and towers and bridges, their laughter filling the apartment like music. Outside, the snow continued to fall, soft and steady, but inside it was warm and bright and full of possibility. The days lengthened into weeks, and winter slowly began to release its grip on Maple Grove. The snow melted in patches, revealing the brown earth beneath, and the first tentative signs of spring began to appear. Crocuses and snowdrops pushing up through the cold ground, promises of warmer days to come. Clara settled into her new role as building owner with a mixture of trepidation and excitement. There was so much to learn, so many details she had never considered before, from heating bills to roof repairs to the complex web of relationships among the tenants. But she approached each challenge with the same grace and determination that had carried her through the difficult years of single motherhood, and slowly, gradually, she began to feel confident in her ability to manage. She reopened the bakery, not as a full-time business, but as a community space, a place where neighbors could gather for coffee and conversation. She didn't have Mrs. Patterson's skill with bread, but she learned to make simple things, muffins and scones and cookies, and the building once again filled with the warm scent of baking. Douglas Fletcher, Mrs. Patterson's nephew, had quietly dropped his challenge to the will after Henry Whitmore explained the strength of the legal protections Margaret had put in place. Clara never met him, never heard from him again, and she found she didn't hold any anger toward him. He had been desperate, perhaps, or confused, or simply unaware of the depth of connection his aunt had felt for the people in her building. Whatever his reasons, he had faded away like morning mist, and Clara was content to let him go. One afternoon in early March, as Clara was wiping down the counter in the bakery, the bell above the door chimed and a woman walked in. She was about Clara's age, with curly red hair and freckles scattered across her nose, and she looked around the space with an expression of delighted recognition. "Oh, it's exactly the same," she breathed. "Exactly the way I remember it." Clara set down her cloth and smiled. "Can I help you?" The woman turned to her, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I'm sorry," she said, laughing a little. "This must seem so strange. It's just, I grew up in this building. My mother was one of Margaret's first tenants, back when I was just a little girl. I used to come down here every Saturday morning, and Margaret would let me help her roll out the bread dough." Clara felt her heart expand with warmth. "Would you like a cup of coffee?" she asked. "I'd love to hear more about those days." The woman's name was Sarah, and she stayed for 2 hours, sharing stories about Mrs. Patterson and the building and the community that had flourished here decades ago. She talked about Saturday morning baking sessions and summer barbecues in the courtyard and the way Margaret had helped her mother through a difficult divorce, offering not just a reduced rent, but also friendship and support. She was special, Sarah said, her voice soft with memory. Really special. I've never forgotten her kindness, Clara nodded, feeling a deep sense of connection to this stranger who had been touched by the same generous spirit. She still is, she said. Even now, she's still taking care of people. Sarah looked at her curiously, and Clara found herself telling the whole story, the eviction notice and the attorney's visit, and the inheritance that had changed everything. By the end, they were both crying, and Sarah reached across the table to squeeze Clara's hand. "She chose well," Sarah said. "I can see why she trusted you with this place." After Sarah left, promising to return soon, Clara stood alone in the bakery, surrounded by the ghosts of all the lives that had been touched within these walls. She thought about legacy, about the way kindness ripples outward through time, touching people you've never met, changing lives you'll never know about. She thought about what she wanted her own legacy to be, and she realized that it was already taking shape in every muffin she baked, every tenant she helped, every moment of love she shared with Lily. She was building something here, something that would outlast her, something that would continue to grow and flourish long after she was gone. The thought filled her with a deep sense of peace. Spring arrived in full force, painting Maple Grove in shades of green and pink and yellow. The trees along Chestnut Street burst into bloom, their branches heavy with blossoms that fell like snow when the wind blew, carpeting the sidewalks in soft petals. The courtyard behind the building came alive with color as Clara and the other tenants worked together to plant a garden, filling the old, raised beds with vegetables and flowers and herbs. Lily turned 8 in April, and they celebrated with a party in the courtyard, surrounded by neighbors who had become friends. There was cake and ice cream and a piñata shaped like a unicorn. And Lily ran from guest to guest, her face bright with joy, accepting hugs and birthday wishes with the easy grace of a child who knows she is loved. "Make a wish," Clara said as Lily bent over her candles, the flames flickering in the spring breeze. Lily closed her eyes, her face scrunched in concentration, and then she blew out all 8 candles in a single breath. When she opened her eyes, she was smiling. "What did you wish for?" Clara asked. Lily shook her head. "I can't tell you, Mama. It won't come true if I tell." But Clara saw the way Lily looked around at the courtyard, at the garden and the neighbors and the building that rose above them, and she thought she could guess. Some wishes didn't need to be spoken aloud. Some wishes had already come true. As the party wound down and the neighbors began to drift away, Clara found herself standing alone by the garden, watching the sun set behind the building. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the air was soft and warm, carrying the scent of growing things. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, about all the challenges and disappointments and moments of despair. She thought about the Christmas 3 months ago when she had stood at the window of this same building, watching the snow fall and wondering how she would survive the loss of her home. She thought about the kindness of a woman she had loved and the gift that had changed everything, and she felt, in that moment, a sense of gratitude so profound it took her breath away. Gratitude for Mrs. Patterson, for her generosity and her foresight. Gratitude for Lily, for her joy and her innocence and her capacity for love. Gratitude for this community, for the web of connections that held them all together. Gratitude for life itself, with all its uncertainty and challenge, because it was also full of beauty and wonder and unexpected gifts. "Mama?" Clara turned to find Lily standing behind her, her face still flushed from the excitement of the party. "Yes, sweetheart?" Lily stepped forward and slipped her hand into Clara's. "This was the best birthday ever," she said. Clara squeezed her daughter's hand. "I'm glad," she said. "You deserve the best." They stood there together, mother and daughter, watching the last light fade from the sky. The stars began to appear, one by one, tiny points of light against the gathering darkness. Somewhere in the building, someone was playing music, a soft melody that drifted through the open windows and into the spring night. "Mama?" Lily said again, her voice soft and sleepy. "Yes, sweetheart. I love our home." Clara felt tears prick at her eyes, but she didn't try to stop them. "Me too," she said. "Me too." They walked back inside together, through the courtyard and up the stairs to their apartment, their home, the place where they belonged. Clara tucked Lily into bed and kissed her forehead and whispered goodnight, and then she went to the window and looked out at the quiet street below. The town was settling into sleep, lights flickering off in windows up and down the street, the world growing soft and still. Clara felt the peace of the night seep into her bones, calming her mind and her heart. She thought about the future, about all the days and weeks and months and years that stretched before her. She didn't know what they would bring, couldn't see around the corners of time to glimpse what was coming. But she knew, with a certainty that went deeper than thought, that she would face whatever came with grace and courage and love. Because that was what Mrs. Patterson had taught her. That was the legacy she had inherited, along with the building and the bakery and the community. The legacy of kindness, of compassion, of believing in people even when they didn't believe in themselves. Clara closed her eyes and let the peace wash over her, let it fill every corner of her being. She was home, she was safe, she was loved. And tomorrow she would wake up and do it all again. She would bake muffins and greet tenants and help Lily with her homework. She would tend the garden and listen to neighbors and carry forward the spirit of generosity that had saved her. She would live her life, one day at a time, one moment at a time, with gratitude and grace. Because that was what life was in the end. Not the grand gestures or the dramatic moments, but the small, quiet acts of love that accumulated over time, building something beautiful, something lasting, something real. Clara opened her eyes one last time, looking out at the stars, and she smiled. Then she turned away from the window and went to bed, her heart full, her mind at peace, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. The summer that followed was golden and warm, filled with long days that seemed to stretch on forever, and evenings that cooled slowly into comfortable nights. Clara and Lily fell into a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing, their days shaped by the gentle routines of work and play and rest. The bakery became a gathering place for the neighborhood, a space where people came not just for coffee and pastries, but for connection, for community, for the simple pleasure of being together. Clara learned to recognize the regulars, the retired teacher who came every morning for a scone and the newspaper, the young couple who met there every Friday for a date night they couldn't afford anywhere else, the single father who brought his twin daughters on Saturday mornings because it was the one time all week he could sit and think while they played. She listened to their stories, learned their names, became part of the fabric of their lives, just as they became part of hers. She discovered that Mrs. Patterson had been right, that running a building was about more than maintenance and repairs. It was about relationships, about trust, about creating a space where people felt seen and valued and safe. Lily flourished in this environment, surrounded by people who loved her, in a home that felt permanent and stable. She made friends with the other children in the building, organized elaborate games in the courtyard, appointed herself the unofficial gardener, and spent hours tending to the vegetables and flowers they had planted in the spring. She was growing up, Clara realized one day, watching her daughter from the bakery window. Growing up confident and kind and capable, the kind of person who would make the world a little bit better just by being in it, just as Mrs. Patterson had said. The thought made Clara's heart swell with pride, and with something that felt very much like hope. One such evening in late August, as the summer was beginning to fade into autumn, Clara sat on the bench in the courtyard, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of rose and gold. Lily was playing nearby, chasing fireflies as they blinked their tiny lights in the gathering dusk. "Make a wish," Lily called, cupping a firefly in her hands and then releasing it into the air. Clara smiled and closed her eyes. She thought about wishes, about the things she had hoped for over the years. A stable home, a good life for her daughter. Happiness, whatever that meant. And she realized that all of those wishes had come true, not in the way she had expected, not through her own efforts alone, but through a combination of hard work and luck and the kindness of others. Through Mrs. Patterson's generosity, through the community that had welcomed them, through the love that surrounded them every day. She opened her eyes and watched Lily run across the courtyard, her dark hair flying behind her, her laughter ringing out in the evening air. And she felt, in that moment, complete. Not because her life was perfect, not because all her problems were solved, but because she had everything she needed. A home, a daughter, a community, a purpose. "Mama, come catch fireflies with me," Lily called. Clara stood up from the bench and walked across the courtyard, the grass soft beneath her feet. "Coming, sweetheart," she said. "I'm coming." They chased fireflies together until the stars came out, until the air grew cool and the night wrapped around them like a blanket. Then they went inside, up the stairs to their apartment, and Clara made hot chocolate even though it was still summer, because some traditions don't follow the rules of seasons. They sat on the couch together, mother and daughter, sipping their chocolate and watching the stars through the window. Lily's eyes grew heavy, her head drooping against Clara's shoulder, and Clara held her close, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair. "I love you, Mama," Lily murmured, already half asleep. "I love you too," Clara whispered. "More than all the fireflies in the world." Lily smiled, a small, peaceful smile, and her breathing slowed into the gentle rhythm of sleep. Clara sat there for a long time, holding her daughter, watching the stars, feeling the weight of gratitude and love settle over her like a warm blanket. This was her life. This was her home. This was everything she had ever wanted. And it was more than enough. The autumn came softly to Maple Grove, painting the trees in shades of amber and crimson and gold. The air grew crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke, and the days shortened, drawing everyone indoors earlier and earlier as the darkness crept in. Clara loved this time of year, the coziness of it, the way it encouraged reflection and gratitude. She found herself thinking often of Mrs. Patterson, of the gift she had given, of the legacy she had left behind. A year had passed since that snowy Christmas Eve when everything had changed, and Clara felt like a different person than the frightened woman who had stood at the window watching the snow fall and wondering how she would survive. She was stronger now, more confident, more at peace. She had learned to trust herself, to trust the community around her, to trust that even when things seemed darkest, there was light waiting just around the corner. She had learned that kindness was not a weakness, but a strength, that generosity created more than it cost, that love, freely given, had a way of multiplying beyond anything you could imagine. On the anniversary of Mrs. Patterson's death, Clara organized a memorial in the bakery, inviting all the tenants and neighbors who had known Margaret to come and share their memories. They told stories and laughed and cried, remembering the woman who had touched so many lives with her quiet, steady kindness. "She would have loved this," Mrs. Chen said, looking around at the gathered crowd. "All these people together. This is what she always wanted." Clara nodded, feeling Mrs. Patterson's presence in the room, in the warmth and the laughter and the sense of community that filled the space. "She's here," she said softly. "I can feel her." And she could. Not as a ghost or a spirit, but as a presence, a warmth, a love that had been woven into the very fabric of the building. Mrs. Patterson lived on in every brick and beam, in every cup of coffee shared, in every act of kindness passed from one person to another. This was her legacy, and now it was Clara's to carry forward. As winter approached once more, Clara found herself looking forward to the holidays with a sense of anticipation she hadn't felt in years. She planned a Christmas party for the building, stringing lights in the courtyard and decorating the bakery with garlands and ornaments. She baked cookies and pies and breads, filling the building with the warm scents of the season. On Christmas Eve, the tenants gathered in the bakery, bundled in sweaters and scarves, their faces glowing in the soft light of the candles Clara had placed on every surface. They sang carols and exchanged gifts and shared stories, the room filled with warmth and laughter and love. Lily moved through the crowd like a small Christmas angel, distributing cookies and collecting hugs, her face bright with joy. She had grown so much in the past year, Clara realized, watching her daughter with pride. She was becoming her own person, confident and kind and full of light. "Mama, look," Lily called, pointing out the window. "It's snowing." Clara crossed to the window and looked out at the night sky, at the white flakes drifting down through the darkness. The snow was falling softly, silently, covering the world in a blanket of white. Just like last year, she thought. Just like the night everything changed. But this year, she wasn't afraid. This year, she knew that whatever came, she and Lily would face it together. They had a home, a community, a legacy of love to sustain them. They had everything they needed. She felt a hand slip into hers and looked down to find Lily standing beside her, her green eyes reflecting the snow falling outside. "Merry Christmas, Mama," Lily said. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," Clara replied. They stood there together, mother and daughter, watching the snow fall, surrounded by the warmth and love of their community. And Clara felt, in that moment, a peace so profound it seemed to fill every corner of her being. This was home. This was family. This was love. And it was everything. The night grew later, and the party wound down, tenants drifting off to their own apartments with wishes of Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Clara cleaned up the bakery slowly, savoring the quiet after the bustle of the evening, the soft silence broken only by the gentle clink of dishes and the distant sound of Lily's breathing as she dozed on the couch. When the bakery was clean and the lights were dimmed, Clara carried Lily upstairs to their apartment, the small body heavy with sleep in her arms. She tucked her daughter into bed, smoothing the covers around her, and bent to kiss her forehead. "Sweet dreams, sweetheart," she whispered. "Santa will be here soon." Lily murmured something unintelligible and rolled over, her breathing deep and even. Clara stood there for a moment, watching her sleep, her heart full of love. Then she went to the window and looked out at the snow-covered world. The streets of Maple Grove were quiet and still, the houses dark except for the occasional glow of Christmas lights. The snow continued to fall, soft and silent, covering everything in white. Clara thought about the year that was ending, about all its challenges and joys. She thought about the year ahead, about the possibilities that lay before her. And she felt, in that moment, a deep sense of gratitude for everything she had been given. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson," she whispered into the darkness. "Thank you for everything." She could almost hear the old woman's voice in response, warm and gentle. "You're welcome, dear. Now get some rest. You have a big day tomorrow." Clara smiled and let her eyes drift closed. She was tired, a good kind of tired, the kind that comes from a day well lived, a life well loved. She thought she would just rest here for a moment, just close her eyes and listen to the silence of the night. And as she drifted off to sleep, the snow continued to fall outside her window, soft and silent and beautiful, covering the world in a blanket of white, covering the building and the bakery and the courtyard where Bartholomew the snowman would rise again in the morning, covering the town of Maple Grove and all its sleeping residents, covering everything in peace and quiet and the gentle promise of a new day. Clara slept, and she dreamed of warmth and light and love. She dreamed of Mrs. Patterson and Lily and all the people who had become her family. She dreamed of the future, bright and full of possibility, stretching out before her like a path through a snow-covered forest. And in her dream, she was home. She was safe. She was loved. And that was all she had ever really wanted. The snow fell and fell, soft and silent, covering the world in white. And in a small apartment above an old bakery in a town called Maple Grove, a mother and her daughter slept peacefully, surrounded by the warmth of their home and the love of their community. Christmas morning would come soon, bringing with it presents and laughter and all the small, precious moments that make life worth living. But for now, there was only this: the quiet of the night, the peace of sleep, the gentle promise of tomorrow. Clara breathed deeply, her chest rising and falling in the slow rhythm of rest. Lily stirred in her bed, murmuring something about snowmen and cookies. Outside, the snow continued to fall, soft and silent and endless, and the world was at peace. The years unfolded gently after that, each one bringing its own challenges and joys, its own moments of difficulty and grace. Clara watched Lily grow from a little girl into a young woman, watched her discover her passions and her strengths, watched her become the kind of person who made the world a little bit better just by being in it. The building on Chestnut Street remained the heart of their lives, a constant in a world that was always changing. Clara tended to it with love and care, repairing what needed repairing, improving what could be improved, always keeping in mind Mrs. Patterson's vision of a place where people felt welcome and safe and loved. The bakery became something of a local institution, a gathering place where neighbors came to share coffee and conversation, where children learned to bake alongside their parents, where the traditions of community were passed down from one generation to the next. Clara never became the baker that Mrs. Patterson had been, but she learned enough to keep the spirit of the place alive, and that was enough. Lily went off to college, then started her own career, then met someone kind and good and full of light. Clara watched her daughter build her own life, her own home, her own legacy of love, and she felt a pride so profound it sometimes took her breath away. And through it all, through the years and the changes and the inevitable losses that come with a life fully lived, Clara held on to the lesson Mrs. Patterson had taught her. That kindness matters. That generosity creates more than it costs. That home is not a place but a feeling, a sense of belonging, a knowledge that you are loved. She never forgot the Christmas when everything changed, the snowy night when she had stood at the window wondering how she would survive, not knowing that help was already on its way. She never forgot the gift she had been given, the legacy she had inherited, the responsibility she had accepted, and she never stopped being grateful for her home, for her daughter, for the community that had become her family, for the kindness of a woman who had seen her, had valued her, had loved her enough to change her life. This was her story. This was her home. This was her life, and it was beautiful. Now, as the night deepens and the stars shine bright outside your window, you too can rest. You can let go of the worries of the day, the anxieties of tomorrow. You can sink into the warmth of your bed, the comfort of your pillow, the peace of this quiet moment. Like Clara, you have everything you need. You have your breath, steady and slow. You have your body, heavy with approaching sleep. You have this moment, soft and still and full of possibility. And like the snow falling gently over Maple Grove, peace is settling over you now, soft and silent and beautiful, covering your thoughts, quieting your mind, wrapping you in warmth and comfort and rest. You are safe, you are loved, you are home. And as you drift off to sleep, know that tomorrow will bring its own gifts, its own challenges, its own moments of grace. But for now, there is only this: the quiet of the night, the peace of rest, the gentle promise of dreams. Sleep well, sleep deeply, sleep peacefully, and know that you are exactly where you are meant to be. The snow continues to fall, soft and silent and endless. The world is at peace, and you are drifting now, drifting down into the warmth of sleep, into the comfort of rest, into the gentle embrace of dreams. Let go, breathe deeply, rest. You are home, you are safe, you are loved, and that is all you have ever really needed. Good night.